Let me tell you the incredible story of Mary Grace, a woman whose life took a profound turn after a near-death experience that changed everything for her. This tale begins at a time when Mary Grace was at her lowest point, struggling with immense physical, emotional, and spiritual challenges. It was on November 1st, 2001, known as All Saints' Day, that her journey to transformation started. At that time, Mary Grace was battling two incurable illnesses, lupus and epilepsy, for over 20 years. Lupus, for those who might not know, is an autoimmune disease where the body attacks its own healthy tissues and organs. This condition, combined with epilepsy, meant Mary Grace endured between 4 and 6 seizures every single day. The toll of these illnesses led to 5 surgeries, a hole in her heart, and the need to see 5 different medical doctors regularly. She was on 24 different medications just to keep going. Physically, Mary Grace was alive, but she wasn't truly living. She felt like she was dying but not yet dead. On top of these health struggles, Mary Grace had been addicted to drugs and alcohol since the age of 14. By the time she reached her breaking point, she couldn't take it anymore. She felt she had enough and needed to do something, though she wasn't sure what. On that fateful night of November 1st, Mary Grace drove to a cemetery to be near her mother's grave. She was grieving the recent loss of her mother, and mentally and spiritually, she felt already dead. At the cemetery, Mary Grace got down on her knees on the cold ground of her mother's grave and begged God to take her home. She was angry with God, questioning why she was living in such a state of limbo. She cried out, pleading for God to either heal her or take her away, demanding some kind of resolution. Mary Grace sobbed and prayed, asking if God had no compassion or mercy, wondering why all this suffering was happening to her. In her anguish, Mary Grace tried to make a deal with God. She promised that if God gave her a sign that she hadn't been abandoned, she would quit drinking. But if no sign came, she declared she would drink herself to death because she no longer cared. After what felt like hours of praying and sobbing with no response, Mary Grace felt defeated, emotionally and spiritually bankrupt. She gave up and went home, feeling like she was just talking to herself with no one listening. However, the very next day, Mary Grace received the sign she had begged for, and it came in the form of a near-death experience that would alter the course of her life forever. The following day, Mary Grace decided to drive to the city of Rochester, New York, which was about 45 minutes north of her rural home in the Finger Lakes region of western New York. Her plan was to get some drugs and also to buy a book called Oneness, Last Time, by John Edward. Before leaving, Mary Grace took a couple of ephedrine pills, something she often did to counteract the exhaustion caused by lupus, which forced her to sleep 10 to 15 hours a day. She drove to Rochester, bought a bag of cocaine, and placed it in the console of her car. Then she stopped at a nearby liquor store to purchase a bottle of whiskey, which she hid under the front seat of her vehicle. As Mary Grace drove along the expressway known as 390, which circles around Rochester, something extraordinary happened. A song came on the radio, one she hadn't heard in about 20 years, by the rock band Styx from the 1980s. The song was titled, Why Me? And its lyrics spoke directly to her broken spirit. The refrain echoed her exact feelings from the night before at the cemetery, when nothing seems to fit, and things don't go your way. You know you've had enough. You've had the right to say, why me? Why me? Hearing this, Mary Grace instantly burst into tears of joy, excitement, and relief. She knew this was her sign from God. At that very moment, she felt an electrical surge course through her entire body, as if struck by a lightning bolt from the heavens. Strangely, there was no pain, and Mary Grace didn't care about anything else. She was just overjoyed to have received her sign. It wasn't until much later that Mary Grace learned what had actually happened at that moment. she was experiencing cardiac arrest. But in the car, unaware of the gravity of the situation, she continued driving, tears streaming down her face. Thanking God for not abandoning her. She was near the exit for a Borders bookstore, where she planned to buy the book by John Edward. Managing to pull off the expressway, Mary Grace drove around the corner to the bookstore's parking lot. She parked her car quite a distance from the front door, wanting some privacy. After parking, she noticed the time on the clock was 5:15 in the evening. Mary Grace turned off the car, leaned her head back against the headrest, and continued to sob. Overwhelmed with gratitude, she kept repeating, "Thank you, God. Thank you for not abandoning me." And, babies. In the next instant, something miraculous occurred. Mary Grace found herself floating upward. Up, into the most beautiful, bright white light she had ever seen. When she reached this brilliant place, she was completely immersed in an overwhelming sense of love that saturated every cell of her body. This love was 1,000,000 times more intense than anything she had ever felt on earth. It was indescribable. Within this light, Mary Grace felt a profound peace and tranquility settle into her mind, as if she were wrapped in a soft, down-filled comforter. She knew she was being taken care of, and everything was going to be all right. Relaxing into a total state of surrender, Mary Grace recognized this being of light and the place she was in. She was with her Creator in heaven, and she was home. This light and love made Mary Grace feel like she was the most important person in the universe. She understood that nothing she could ever say or do would separate her from this light, as they were merged into one. Concepts like condemnation and punishment didn't exist in this all-encompassing love. Any sins she had committed on earth were already forgiven. She wasn't there to be judged. She was there to be held, to rest, and to heal. Following this, Mary Grace experienced what is often called a life review, while she chose not to share all the details. As many were personal, and not things she was proud of, she did learn something profound. People she once thought were unkind to her were actually helping her progress in her spiritual evolution. Everything in her life, the pain, the insanity, suddenly made perfect sense to her. After the life review, Mary Grace returned to the light. Without any spoken words, God communicated with her, saying, "I have done everything you asked of me. I gave you a sign that I haven't abandoned you, and I brought you back home. However, you cannot stay. Your work is not yet finished." In response, Mary Grace felt at peace with this decision. With this thought, the light began to pull away from her, and she felt herself being drawn backward. The next thing she knew, Mary Grace was back in her car in the Borders bookstore parking lot, feeling an incredible high and total euphoria. It was as if she could conquer the world. The feeling was 1,000,000 times better than any drug she had ever taken. But sitting there, Mary Grace tried to process what had just happened. She glanced at her watch and saw the time was 6 o'clock. 45 minutes had passed since she parked the car. Still in shock, she spoke out loud, ironically asking, "What the hell just happened?" Though she didn't fully understand it at the time, Mary Grace knew something incredible had occurred. As she sat there, she suddenly remembered the promise she made to God the night before. Reaching into the console, she took out the bag of cocaine, and from under the front seat, she pulled out the bottle of whiskey. Looking at these items, she thought to herself that this wouldn't be easy. But at the same time, they no longer mattered to her. They seemed trivial, like cheap candy, compared to the high she was experiencing from her encounter with the divine. She no longer desired to use them. Mary Grace checked herself over. Feeling fantastic, she decided to go into the bookstore to get the book she'd driven all the way there for. Stepping out of the car into the parking lot, she quickly realized that the world she was stepping into was not the same one she had left 45 minutes earlier. As she walked across the parking lot to the store's front door, she didn't feel like she was walking. She felt like she was floating. Inside the store, looking around at the other customers, Mary Grace felt an overwhelming love for them, but she wanted to run up to each person, hug them and tell them, "Don't you know how much God loves you? Don't you know how much I love you? Everything is going to be all right." Fortunately, she restrained herself, got the book, and left the store quickly. Over time, Mary Grace came to realize just how much her life had changed on the day she saw the light. The after effects of her near-death experience were profound and far-reaching. One of the first things she noticed was that her heart overflowed with a level of love that didn't seem human. She loved everyone unconditionally, whether it was a homeless person on the street or her husband. She loved the birds, squirrels, bunnies, and the forest just as much as she loved her family and friends. This love was so intense that it physically hurt, causing a constant pain in her chest. She felt a living presence within her, and she often thought her heart might explode from the sheer magnitude of it. Mary Grace also started to experience sudden onsets of joy and bliss, which she called passion attacks. She would cry tears of joy for no apparent reason, whether she was looking at a daffodil and seeing God in it, or feeling the raindrops on her arm, which she began to call liquid love. Through research, she learned that what she was experiencing was a unitive experience, a sense of oneness with everything. There was nothing she wasn't connected to. This oneness allowed her to merge with whatever she focused her mind on. For instance, while walking near a lake, she could merge with an eagle soaring overhead and feel what it was like to glide through the sky. She would scatter milkweed seeds to the wind and feel what it was like to float on the breeze. In winter, she would focus on a single snowflake and experience the peaceful joy of falling gently from the sky. This newfound connection to everything led Mary Grace to spend much of her time in nature and meditation, deepening her intense relationship with God. One day, she had an epiphany. If God was in her, then God must be in everyone else too. This realization clashed with what she had been taught in her Catholic upbringing, where God was portrayed as separate, residing in heaven and accessible only by following church rules. Suddenly, her religion didn't make sense to her anymore. Additionally, her consciousness expanded, and she discovered she could communicate with spirits, including her angels, guides, and her late mother. She even met her grandmother, who had passed away when Mary Grace was only 5 years old. Physically, Mary Grace's body underwent miraculous changes as well. Before her near-death experience, getting out of bed and managing her morning routine to keep her part-time job as a mental health counselor was a struggle. After the experience, she found herself walking to a nearby lake with her dogs, a round trip of about 3 kilometers. With boundless energy, the day after her near-death experience, her seizures stopped completely. Determined to understand what had happened, Mary Grace visited all 5 of her doctors for a full checkup. New brainwave tests, heart tests, and lupus tests all came back negative. Even the hole in her heart was gone. She was completely disease-free. Over several months, she tapered off all 24 medications she had been taking. Not only was she free of illness and medication, but she was also liberated from her drug and alcohol addiction. Her obsession with God had replaced any desire for substances. However, integrating back into the world proved to be a challenge for Mary Grace. One she still hasn't fully overcome. She often felt like she had 1 foot in this world and 2 in the other side. Emotionally, she was on a roller coaster. When she was in nature or meditating, she was happy and in bliss. But when she had to engage in everyday roles as a wife, sister, aunt, or psychologist, she struggled. Mundane tasks like cleaning the house, doing laundry, or paying bills no longer mattered to her. Much to the frustration of her husband, she felt these things wouldn't affect her eternal life. So why bother? Another significant change was in her relationship with food. Mary Grace barely ate anymore, feeling constantly high, as if on stimulants, where hunger wasn't an issue. Eating became torture for her because she felt at one with everything. To her, eating felt like cannibalism. Looking at a hamburger, she saw the big brown eyes of a cow. She was painfully aware that something had to die for her to live, which deeply bothered her. She gave up meat entirely and even struggled with eating bread. Knowing a stalk of wheat had given its life for her, this led her to feel jealous of her food, wishing she could trade places with it to return to heaven with her mother and God. To this day, Mary Grace doesn't eat much, considering it a waste of time when she has better things to do, like connecting with the divine. The emotional imbalance and the sense of being out of place in this world led Mary Grace to seek help. As someone in the mental health field, she knew she could turn to fellow therapists or psychiatrists. But she feared they would suggest hospitalization or medication, treating her experience as a medical issue rather than a spiritual one. Instead, she turned to her priest, a decision that was terrifying for her as a lifelong Catholic who had never sought one-on-one counseling from clergy before. She shared her entire story with him, hoping for understanding. However, his response was stern and judgmental. He told her that what she was doing, communicating with spirits and her mother, went against Catholic teachings and accused her of dabbling with the devil. He suggested she was hallucinating from drugs and needed psychiatric help and hospitalization. Finally, he told her to find another church. Devastated, Mary Grace ran out of the meeting sobbing and returned home to her husband. Overwhelmed with grief, as the week passed, her sadness turned to anger. She couldn't believe the priest would bar her from the church where she had been baptized. Had her first communion, confirmation, and got married, a place she had attended for 40 years. Determined not to be pushed out, she attended Mass the following Sunday. The next day, a sheriff from Livingston County showed up at her door with orders from the priest, stating she was not to attend Mass ever again, or she would be arrested for trespassing. Mary Grace was legally excommunicated from her hometown church for maintaining a relationship with her devout Catholic mother, and for the spiritual experiences she had undergone. This rejection led Mary Grace to question why, if God could love and accept her, her own religion could not. She also wondered why, if people could talk to God and saints in heaven, she couldn't communicate with her mother or other loved ones who had passed. Over the next 10 years, she dedicated herself to researching and writing a book titled Talking to God and Grandma, Mystics, Mediums, and the Communion of Saints. This book integrates parapsychology with Christian theology, mysticism, spiritualism, and Catholicism, focusing on spirit communication, particularly for Catholics. Though it's accessible to anyone interested, she also left the mental health field to start her own non-profit organization, Gifts of Grace Ministry, to help others who have had paranormal, supernatural, mystical, or near-death experiences. Later expanding to include extraterrestrial and UFO experiences through her Finger Lakes UFO meetup group. Mary Grace's life after her near-death experience continued to be filled with a sense of bliss. She meditates for a couple of hours each day, morning and night, and finds herself in a state of walking meditation when in nature, connecting with God. She still experiences that oneness, merging with elements like milkweed seeds or snowflakes. Feeling their essence, despite the profound joy, integration into everyday life remains difficult. She often feels like an alien in this world, a visitor who doesn't belong, avoiding news and social media to protect herself from negativity and living in her own reality. Much to her husband's occasional frustration. Her relationship with her husband also evolved. Initially, Mary Grace didn't share her experience with him, and when she did, he didn't believe or understand it. Over time, as she wrote her book and traveled to share her story, he began to see there was something to it. Though he jokingly calls her spiritual pursuits metaphysical nonsense, he has become more supportive. Even attending her UFO meetings and learning about her experiences, they celebrated their 45th wedding anniversary. A testament to their ability to grow together despite the challenges, maintaining separate lives that allowed space for her transformation. Mary Grace found community through organizations like the International Association for Near-Death Studies, where she has been a member for over 20 years and volunteers in sharing groups. She also connects with like-minded individuals through her UFO and paranormal meetup group, podcasts and Zoom meetings. While she often feels alone, she is never lonely, surrounded by her spirit friends, angels, guides, and animal companions. Her ministry continues to support others with similar experiences, offering counseling over the phone or Zoom, and guided meditations to help people connect with loved ones in heaven, or even extraterrestrial family. Through her journey, Mary Grace has written another book, Breakfast with Bluebirds, a collection of inspirational short stories dedicated to the Buffalo Bills football team and their fans. With proceeds supporting her ministry, her message to everyone is clear: put your trust and faith in God. No matter what you're going through, even when you don't understand why things are happening, God knows. And everything will work out in the end. Doors may close, but God often has something better waiting. You are never alone. Your angels, guides, and loved ones on the other side are always with you, helping you along the way. Mary Grace's story is a powerful reminder of the transformative power of faith, love, and the enduring connection to the divine.